The level of hacking, I think, is something companies don't talk about very openly. So, but whenever I get a CEO in front of me, I say, how much is your company getting hacked? How often? I tend to, when I get any answers, it's usually often, like daily.
Well, you're better than me. I don't think you get many answers out of folks when you ask them those questions, right? They don't want to admit to that. But yeah, hacks have been happening again and again. And I've been in this business now for the last decade, and I've just been watching it happen over and over again as an investigator, and now working with Tanium to help prevent these things from happening in the future. So it's been an interesting atmosphere.
Timothy, what is the view? I mean, you got unique access into sort of the thinking of the White House about what's going on and what we're doing and not talking about, and what China's doing and not talking about. What is the sense of alarm about China's role in hacking?
Well, I mean, in this context, I can only really speak as a private citizen. I can say that I look at this as being similar to what we saw in the 70s and the 80s, where both, when you kind of look at the old Eastern Bloc and NATO, both sides were kind of probing each other and trying to understand what each other's capabilities were. And I think in this particular case, from my own personal perspective, that's a lot of what's going on. And a lot of the recent policy moves have been really aimed at trying to establish a détente, basically, some level of understanding of which levels of probing were acceptable and which actually aren't.
Specifically, it seems like there's a little more than probing. I mean, obviously what we saw with the Sony hack seems to have really changed the game. David, is that the thing that really has business concerned about the cost of these things, bigger than the Target hack, bigger than all the other ones we've seen?
Yeah, I think since before Sony, no one really had an understanding that an attack could result in such disruption. And I think the interesting takeaway there is every attack we see, even by financially motivated attackers, could end that way. They just choose to steal information or data or money, and it's lucky that these people are greedy as opposed to want to see destruction happen.
For now, I mean, is that probing, Tim? Is that really the probing about sort of the beginning and the understanding? Because one of the things we've seen with these cyber attacks is a new level of patience, where whoever's doing the hacking is, indeed, some have been traced back to China, where they get into a system and stay there for long periods of time, figuring out when the weakest operators are on, when they're running software updates and so on, and then poaching what they're trying to poach.
Yeah, and that's why I compare it to the security situation and the development of the security situation between East and West over the 70s and the 80s. So in the early days of the kind of the post-World War II period, there was just a mad scramble to get capabilities, and no one really knew what the other side was capable of. And then we began to see a shift from, let's say, tactical intrusions to strategic intrusions. And I think we're seeing the same thing now with security. Movement from tactical, let's say, greed-based intrusions to more strategic intrusions, where there's a belief, probably, that the greatest value is in long-term, persistent access and the information that comes from that persistent access. So therefore, there's no need to hurry and try to grab something and run out the back door. So I would expect to see more of this strategic intrusion as part of this this probing by, quite frankly, both sides of the equation.
David, do you feel like business can lead the way here, that the business risk is so great for both countries and businesses in both countries that the business people can say, hey, you knuckleheads, cut it out?
I think it's going to take a little bit more than that. The policy is definitely going to help. We need to better protect ourselves. But the real challenge here is that China is not really playing fair with the U.S., right? Lots of countries perform hacking. They do hacking operations. They gain competitive intel for governments and defense contractors, things like that. But China is one of the ones that's really focused on stealing information related to industry, and that's what they really have to stop.
Yeah, I guess I wonder also if we say we won't do it anymore, if they say we won't do it anymore, is that really going to stick? Are they going to keep? I mean, they haven't said they're doing it in the first place.
I don't think you're ever going to get it to stop entirely. I think what the administration should be focused on, though, is narrowing the scope of what types of hacks that are occurring to government type entities, to military type secrets. That's what governments typically do. They need to limit that, though, and prevent them from hacking into corporations, stealing intellectual property, things of that nature.
And this is my point about a détente, getting to that level of understanding that, yes, both sides are going to try to create cyber capabilities. That's just the evolution of technology. But certain things are going to be perceived as a direct strategic threat to national interests and to national security, and other intrusions won't be. And I think those lines need to get established. And I think, from my perspective as a private citizen, again, I think that's what the discussions are about right now.
David, last question, just 15 seconds here. Is it important that this is happening now?
Yeah, I think it's important that it's happening now. After everything we've seen in the last few weeks, I think it's been a lead up to that, and I hope that we'll actually get a chance to sit down now and define some of those more detailed laws or rules that are necessary for rules of engagement between the U.S. and China.